One of the most memorable evenings of my life was the night I slept in Liam's room. It began on a Monday that was otherwise peaceful. The clock on my nightstand ticked off each second while I lay in bed, gazing up at the ceiling. It had taken me weeks to get a good night's sleep. The empty space next to me served as a continual reminder that my husband was rarely home, and the bed felt too big. He claimed to have been out late at work. He occasionally failed to return at all, stating that he was too exhausted to make the drive following a business trip or client supper. I had long since stopped questioning it, but the eerie silence that remained felt like a part of me had been vanishing without my knowledge. In contrast, Liam had spent the previous year in our guest room. I consented when Liam needed a place to stay in between jobs because he and my husband were longtime friends. As time went on, I saw things about him that I had never seen before. He was now 24 years old, had a certain strength to his build, and exuded a confidence that I couldn't help but notice. The jovial man who used to scatter soda cans had changed into someone else, someone who occasionally gave me a prohibited rush of joy and made my heart race with confusion. I chastised myself for having these feelings. What sort of lady develops feelings for a friend who lives with her? However, these thoughts grew stronger the more I tried to suppress them. The silence was broken late on Monday night by the faint rustle of footsteps in the corridor. As my heart raced, I held my breath and listened to the sounds subside. My hands were shaking, but I reminded myself that it was just Liam, who was probably up for a drink of water. I willed myself to relax and squinted my eyes. He is merely a buddy and a tenant. However, the strain persisted. I just knew that something was changing inside of me, but I had no idea why. I discovered Liam in the kitchen the following morning, drinking a mug of coffee while leaning against the counter. The sunlight streaming in through the window gave his complexion a subtle gold tint and accentuated the creases on his face. When I intervened, he looked up and gave me a half-smile. His voice was low and a little gruff as he said, "Morning." I forced myself to play with the coffee maker in the morning so I wouldn't have to stare at him all day. "Not able to get any rest last night?" he inquired. "You say that, but why?" Startled, I answered. He sipped and shrugged. "I could hear you turning and tossing. I thought you might be bothered by something." I laughed a little too quickly. "I suppose I have too much on my mind." He gave a contemplative nod. "Same," he said, and that one word hung in the room like a burden that neither of us could identify. The TV was humming in the background as I was folding laundry in the living room that afternoon. Spread out on the couch, Liam browsed through his phone. Even though it should have been completely normal, my gaze kept going to him. Is folding clothes solely my responsibility, or do you ever do it? I tried to sew while I tormented. Indie casual. His grin was twisted as he raised his head. "I believed that to be your sole right. I would rather not take it away from you." I shot back, throwing a rolled-up sock at him. "Oh, you're impossible." He laughed as he caught it and tossed it back in a soft arc. Okay, I'll assist you." He picked up a clean towel and slid off the couch to crouch next to me. He folded it quite skillfully. I gave him a mildly amused look. I said, "I guess there's a lot I don't know about you." There was a warmth in his sight that made my arms stand on end. "If I try, you'd be shocked at how much I can do." His tone made my heart thud. Although there was a hint of flirtation in his words, there was more going on. I averted my gaze to concentrate on the crumpled t-shirt I was holding. I forced an overly airy laugh and said, "Well, let's see how consistent you are." "Anything to ease your burden," he whispered. His voice was so gentle that it made my cheeks flame up. I went to bed early that night, but I couldn't sleep. The bed next to me was vacant, and my husband was gone once more. I hadn't really realized how lonely I was as midnight approached. I couldn't get Liam's tiny smile and the silent worry in his eyes out of my head. I had been deprived of feeling seen for so many months. I understood that Liam made me feel seen and cared for in just that way. Then came the moment I didn't anticipate. My heart pounded when I heard movement in the corridor. I had warned myself not to go out of my room or take any hasty actions. However, a power within me pushed me onward, propelling me from my bed and across the quiet hallway until I found myself standing in front of Liam's partially closed door. Even if my mind begged me to turn around, I pushed the door open. Inside, the walls were shadowed by a weak lamp. Liam had his back half turned. His shoulders were stiff as he sat on the side of his bed. When I saw that he was holding a tiny picture of me, presumably, my breath stuck in my throat. He appeared to have been massaging it for comfort, as seen by the somewhat worn edges. I had gone in, but he had not heard. In the photo, he made a soft, almost delicate motion with his thumb as he ran it over my face. Shock, curiosity, and a sudden unnerving thrill surged through my chest, tightening it. "Liam," I muttered. He whirled abruptly, startled, the picture falling from his grasp. His face flashed from astonishment to a flush that suggested embarrassment at the sight of me. "Yes." He hastily picked up the photo and pressed it to his chest in an attempt to conceal it. "I apologize." His words trailed off. "I didn't mean to." I believed he could hear my heartbeat since it was so loud. I stepped forward and closed the door behind me. "That's a picture of me," I muttered. "Where did you purchase that?" His eyes darted away as he gulped. "It was taken during a cookout a few years back. In some way I got it and I kept it." His voice lowered as he hesitated. "I apologize. Strange, I know. I sometimes wonder if you're happy when I look at it. You appear liberated in this picture." My face was overwhelmed with heat. His confession made me feel uncomfortable, even though I should have been upset or shocked. "Why do you suppose I'm unhappy?" I gritted my teeth and laughed. "I have a schedule, a lovely home, and I'm married." I was rocked by the intensity with which he met my eyes while seated with his shoulders down. He whispered, "I believe you deserve more. And I'm aware that I shouldn't say that. However, whenever I see you, I feel as though something is lacking, as though you are bearing the burden of the entire world by yourself." Despite my desire to reject it, I was unable to do so. Rather, I noticed that I was drawing nearer because of the vulnerability in his gaze. Being careful not to crowd him, I sank onto the bed beside him. He still held the picture tightly. In a moment I hardly remembered, my face appeared on that little piece of paper in dim light, smiling. Still in shock, I muttered, "You keep my picture." "Why?" He glanced down. "Because you are constantly on my mind." My stomach turned over. We were silent for a time. The sound of our erratic, tense breathing filled the void between us. The house was completely silent outside. The world seemed to have shrunk to the two of us in this small, wobbly room for once. "Liam, you are aware that I am married," I said, my voice quivering. He nodded slightly and let out a shaky breath. "Am aware. I'm sorry if this is incorrect. However, I don't dislike how I feel in your presence." My entire being fell apart. I stretched out and touched his forearm with my fingertips before I could stop myself. He turned his hand palm up to allow our fingers to link together and let out a trembling breath. Electricity charged the encounter, as though it validated 1,000 unsaid emotions. Heart thumping in my chest, I said, "I've tried to ignore it. I tried acting like you were just a friend or an old friend of my husband's. I can't lie to myself any longer though. I'm by myself. You also give me a sense of being seen." In return, he squeezed my hand, drawing me in. I felt the warmth of his body embrace me, and my veins began to burn with want. Now that we were close enough, I could see his chest rising and falling quickly and the slight stubble on his jaw. He said, "I don't want you to feel alone any longer." The final thread of my reserve was broken by his comments, which were straightforward yet incredibly emotional. I pressed my lips to his unfocused kiss as I leaned in. At first, it was mild, with both of us apprehensive and our hearts thumping with a mixture of fear and excitement. But as he kissed me back, it became more intense, and I was engrossed in the unadulterated feeling. His fingers tangled in my hair as my hand moved to the nape of his neck. Breathless, we parted ways for a moment. He glanced at the picture that was still in his lap, then back at me. Partly sobbing, partly relieved, I let out a wobbly laugh. It's unbelievable that we're doing this. His forehead rested against mine. I can't even begin to count how many times I've envisioned it. My heart twisted. I muttered that I shouldn't be pleased about that. However, I am. The following seconds were a haze of tangled limbs and gasping whispers. The intense urge to be loved, to be desired, overshadowed the remorse I felt for violating my wife. I felt alive for the first time, as if my heartbeats were once again mine. And it seems like Liam experienced the same desperate spark based on the way he gripped me. Finally, we laid together on his bed, the picture still resting next to the pillow, a mute reminder of our secret. It was hard for me to realize that I had just crossed a line that I never would have dared to cross. The pale moonlight outside crept through the drapes, illuminating the walls in fragmented stripes. Now what? I traced my fingertips along his forearm and inquired in a low voice. The touch made him shiver, but he didn't back down. He turned his head to meet my gaze and admitted, "I don't know. All I know is that I don't regret it." A mixture of relief, dread, and something like hope caused a tear to fall down my cheek. Even though my voice caught, I managed to say that I don't either. However, suddenly everything will be different. Threads of concern knitted across his brow as he nodded. "Am aware. If I've made things more difficult for you, I apologize." I used a gentle kiss to hush him, allowing my lips to speak for me when words could not. For a time, we remained in that state of delicate tranquility, two individuals ensnared in a moment that none of them realized would continue forever. After a while, I managed to pull myself up. It was just after 3 in the morning, according to the clock on his bedside table. I said, "I should go," as it dawned on me that I needed to get back to my own bedroom before sunrise. "Can we speak tomorrow, though? We have to solve this." He sat up with me and nodded. As if securing a treasured secret, he carefully picked up the picture and slipped it inside the drawer of his bedside table. My eyes lingered on that drawer, and the realization that he had been holding my picture just before I entered made my cheeks warm. "I'll be here," he said. At the door, I stopped and turned around for a final glance. It was almost impossible to leave him with the need in his eyes. With every step to my room bringing new waves of fear and illicit thrill, I closed the door behind me. I pondered whether the silence of the home might somehow expose my treachery. In my chest, guilt nodded alongside a faint gleam of ecstasy. Sleep was elusive for the remainder of the night. Questions raced through my head. Should I feel guilty? Shall I inform my husband? Or abandon him? Would I ever really be with Liam? I was unable to respond to any of them. All I knew was that for one night, a sensation of connectedness that I had not realized I much needed had taken the place of the emptiness I had experienced. In the days that followed, we avoided each other during the day and exchanged glances in the living room or kitchen that were more powerful than words. If we were able to get some alone time at night, we let our love run wild once more, sharing hushed confessions, kisses that were stolen behind closed doors, and fingers grazing under the table. It was claustrophobic, rash, and exciting. I wanted to push him away before things grew worse, to put a stop to it. Another part, however, clung on Liam like he was my last hope for warmth for too long. I still don't know what is ahead. My hubby doesn't know. The guilt of my marriage vows and the indisputable love that has grown between Liam and me are at odds with each other. I can't hold it against him. I made this decision as well. All I know is that I feel heartbreakingly alive, wanted and desired for the first time in a long time. What ought I to do? There is a tiny part of me that wishes someone could provide the answers I need. A part of me also questions whether I'll ever have the strength to do what's right, whatever that may be.